Welcome back to Comic IndieCon. We are talking with some of the great creators who are going to be here at the event in Houston, although talking about them in advance. I guess I'm in Austin. You guys are probably somewhere else too, right?
I live in Houston.
All right, so you're already right there.
Yeah,
then.
I'm
Cool.
a local.
Yeah, and I'm in Houston as well.
Oh, so it's just me. All right, well then you guys will all be in Houston, and I will be there too, but I'll be the weirder one out, I guess.
It was with Austin.
Yeah, true. It works. So my name is Kevin Garcia. I am an indie writer and publisher, and also teacher. And I am here talking with some of the guests who are going to be at Comic IndieCon. Jonathan Dory, who has MechaMythic Comics and a new book, The Osirian Code, coming out soon. And Scott Chitwood, Red 5 Comics, who has a whole bunch of books out and is also going to be premiering some, well, not premiering, but having some new books that are going to be there at Comic IndieCon. Thank you guys for joining us. Jonathan, could you tell me real quick what made you want to get into comics?
Oh boy, I mean, my story is probably like a lot of other people, but just loved comics growing up, liked drawing, kind of like getting lost in some of those fantasy worlds. And I was always kind of doing that on the side, even took like a few art classes when I was in college, but, took a very different career path. But it was always something that I wanted to come back to and, did a lot of, just drawing as a hobby and always kind of had this, desire, childhood dream to do a comic one day. And, you kind of realize at some point you're going to run out of one days and you got to just get started. So I think I really got started in about 2017. Actually, I think I was home, stuck in the house during Hurricane Harvey and did my first like real page, like the very first page. And then I put it aside for a couple of years and then kind of knocked out all the rest of it really last year. But just like a lot of other people, just had a lot of favorite comics, from being a kid and just kind of having the chance to fulfill my own dream and, tell my own story.
What's crazy to me is how many times I'll talk to an indie creator and they'll be like, yeah, natural disaster. So I had to stay at home and work. And that's how I finished.
Yeah.
To the job.
The universe has a way sometimes of giving us an opportunity.
Yeah, I did my first independent book during quarantine. So there you go. Scott, how about you? How did you get into publishing in comics?
Well, I was a comic fan from a long time ago, from the 80s. It went back to my family. My dad was in the oil industry, and we had to pick up and move to Norway. And one of the only things that you couldn't watch TV because it was in Norwegian, and you could get 3 books at the bookstore in English. One was Mad Magazine, another was Web of Spider-Man, and the other one was Iron Man. And it was Web of Spider-Man during Kraven's Last Hunt and Iron Man during Armor Wars, and it immediately hooked me. And I sought out more stuff at that point. Got into X-Men, Fantastic Four, all that. I was a big Marvel guy. And then eventually got into Dark Horse. Yeah, I eventually got into Dark Horse and some of the other books. So, collected until, into the 2000s. And I was actually a founder of a Star Wars website called theforce.net. We were notorious for spoiling the prequels during the prequels. And one of the guys on the website with us was a fellow by the name of Paul Inns, and he was our comic book reviewer. And he ended up getting hired by Lucasfilm to run StarWars.com. So it's kind of the inmates running the asylum, really. But when Revenge of the Sith came out, he said, they're not going to be doing any more Star Wars movies. So he decided to leave Lucasfilm. And I met up with him.
They never made another Star Wars film.
Never made another one. Yeah, who knew? Yeah. So I said, hey, I've always wanted to do a comic publishing company. I wanted to make comics on my own. He goes, well, that's funny. So did I. So we kind of grabbed all these Star Wars creators that we had known, artists, graphic designers, colorists, writers even, and started putting together the publishing company that ended up being Red 5 Comics. And it took off from there. So, and of course, if you make a sandbox, you want to play in it, right? So that was the point of it. It was someplace that I could have fun, without having to run through the gatekeepers at the established comic book companies. So yeah, that's how it got started.
Fans becoming creators, I think, is a big part of it. Just like you said, they got the people from theforce.net to work at StarWars.com. I was with the Marvel Handbooks for a bit, and most of that team were people that basically ran wikis before they used the word wiki of just the bios of superheroes. And it's just, why not get the people that love it? And so now Red 5 makes a lot of comics, right? How long has Red 5 been around, and more or less, how big is your inventory?
We've been around since 2007. We were named Diamond's New Publisher of the Year when we got started.
Wow.
We were nominated. We've been nominated for 4 Eisner Awards in that time, and some Harvey Awards. Recent title of ours was nominated or won a National Cartoonist Society Award. So
I like those guys.
Yeah. And we were the first publisher to go with Comixology too. Our comics were files number 0 and 1 in their system.
Wow.
I didn't know that. I knew you guys were like early adopters. I didn't realize you were the first.
Yeah. So they have a soft spot in their heart for us. But we've had a number of our titles optioned for movies and TV. So and the one I wrote with my co-founder Paul Inns is called Afterburn, and it's going to be coming out next year. It finally got filmed. So with Dave Bautista, Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, that's right. When you say coming out next year, you mean coming out next year. That's right.
Yeah,
I remember hearing about that.
We actually, my family and I went and watched them filming it in Slovakia this summer. And the director is a fellow by the name of J.J. Perry. He was the stunt director on John Wick 2, the car chase stunt coordinator on the Fast and the Furious movies. And he did a movie on Netflix called Day Shift with Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg. It's really funny. Go watch it.
I've watched it. I have seen that movie, actually.
Yeah. He's from Houston. Yeah, J.J. Perry's from Houston. And actually, he was here today. I went and had lunch with him and got a sneak peek of the movie, what he's up to. So pretty excited. I think we're in for a treat.
Since you brought it up, let's talk about Afterburn real quick, and then we'll go and talk about Assyrian. Sure. So Afterburn is the title is self-explanatory once you know what it's about. There's a massive, I guess, solar flare that kind of destroys half of the Earth, quarter of the Earth. Yes. And what struck me is when you were saying that your dad worked on an oil rig, the book kind of opens up with somebody working on an oil rig. So is that tied in there? Is there a little bit of personal experience with solar flares and stuff, and that's why you had to write this?
Yeah, I definitely took, my experiences from living overseas, and I actually, my day job now is working in the oil industry. I design offshore oil rigs, funny enough. So
my uncle used to design offshore oil rigs actually back in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's kind of the big Houston industry.
Yeah, right. Who knew? Yeah, but so you could say, the oil industry paid for the comic books. So, but I took a lot of those experiences and things I saw while traveling around the world and put them in the comics I wrote. Afterburn, Riptide, some of the others included. So, that's one of my biggest pieces of advice for writers is get out there, see the world, experience new things outside of your comfort zone, and that helps you come up with good ideas and these fun things and something out of the norm. But Afterburn, it started, when we were trying to brainstorm what kind of comics we'd like to write, we said, well, I'd love to write an Indiana Jones comic, but Lucasfilm will never let us do that. So what do we do? So it was like, how do we do a different take on Indiana Jones? And that's how it took off.
I like that. I would have thought Quartermain. There's always new takes on ideas, and that's always the fun of it. And that's one thing I love about indie comics is that a lot of indie comics will start from a what if this but this, and then become its whole thing from that. On that note, I want to switch back to Jonathan, talk to you about the Osirian Code. This is kind of an existential sci-fi thing. You want to give us a nutshell what we're talking about?
Yeah, it definitely is a psychological sci-fi, and it's kind of funny the way I went about writing this one. I had this other story that I had been kicking around for many years, like drawing characters for when I was in high school, and always wanted to do. And I was like, okay, if you're going to do this, like, let's get serious about it. And so I sat down and I started writing it. I always consider myself more of an artist than a writer, but started writing out the story, and I realized, oh man, this thing is going to take 4 or 5 books to try to tell this story, and I've never even drawn one sequential art page. So the funny thing about this story is I actually sat down and wrote like 90% of it like one day at breakfast, just to give me something to draw. And I basically had the main arc of this first short story done at that time, and then I sat down to try to create this short story. And it is a psychological sci-fi. It kind of deals with future not too far away, where artificial intelligence and robotics are really starting to infuse society a lot. And we've got this guy who's sort of a titan in the industry, Dr. Zayas. You can kind of sort of think of him as like a mix between maybe like a Steve Jobs mixed with Stephen Hawking. Maybe he's got this terminal illness that has him confined to a wheelchair, and he knows he's running out of days. And so he decides to use his prowess and his knowledge in robotics and artificial intelligence to upload his consciousness into a robot to kind of try to extend his life. As I said, like achieve immortality through technology. But predictably, it doesn't exactly go as planned, and so he sort of ends up on this journey through time and space. And it's mostly a psychological, introspective journey that sort of explores the ideas of like, what would it be like to be an artificial intelligence trying to interact with people, or what would it feel like to be this truly unique, one of a kind type of people who just can't maybe relate to the rest of society in a way. And so that's kind of the main arc of the story. But it's funny how you sit down to actually create a book, and it takes a really long time, especially if, like most of us, we have a day job and this is kind of a hobby or something we're doing on the side. So over the course of creating this short story, I ended up having all these other ideas, and kind of like you mentioned, you do a what if story, and then pretty soon this whole other universe starts to unfold. And so now I'm kind of excited about exploring some other parts of the story in future books, and I've been kind of spending my time crafting at least 3 more books to kind of try to wrap up a larger story that kind of tells a bigger picture about cosmology, the nature of consciousness, exploring immortality, not just like through an individual, but kind of cycles of creation and rebirth, like at a civilization scale.
I like that idea of kind of expanding beyond, but I also find it fascinating that you are, both writer and artist. I talk to a lot of people who do one or the other. They have a partner. But with you, if you get into an argument with the writer, there's a problem. So, but it also gives you a certain level of freedom, which is what, like we said earlier, indie creation is all about. The big issue is, like you said, we all have other jobs. Not all, but that's kind of the idea. A lot of us do. So how do you fund it? How do you pay for it? You went to crowdfunding, you went to Kickstarter. You were successful there. What was your experience like trying to reach out to people and get the word out to raise that money?
It's really interesting because I had a little bit of experience with Kickstarter, having, supported a couple of projects, but not that many comics, really just only one comic, one other book. And strangely enough, an organization, my very first Kickstarter that I ever backed was for a private firm who was building a spacesuit, of all things, for commercial spaceflight. And that's actually how I first got turned on to the platform. But when I first kind of started getting interested in getting to this indie comic stuff, one of the first things I did was followed a whole bunch of social media pages of different creators and people who were doing indie comics out there. And so I sort of saw that a lot of creators were creating a Kickstarter to fund their page. And I really didn't have that in mind at all when I first made the book. I made the book just to make it just for me, just to kind of have that bucket list item checked off. But at the end, I was like, well, geez, now what? I'm not going to go pitch this thing to a bunch of big, major people out there. And I saw Kickstarter as an avenue to mostly help maybe get the word out to an audience that I wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. The funding is good. that's obviously, and for a lot of people that might make the huge difference between doing and not doing it. I didn't really even attempt to recover all my expenses, but just a part of them. But mostly it was a way to have another audience reach. Actually, for somebody who basically had no audience at all, it was one way to, hopefully reach an audience. What I found was, first off, that was a mistake. You have to have an audience to really.
It does help. Does help
to start a Kickstarter. So that's kind of where I learned a big lesson. Is it sure helps to have a following before you get started. But I learned another lesson, which is a big part of Kickstarter is a lot of people back a Kickstarter. Yeah, they want a good product, they want good art, they want a good story. But most people back a Kickstarter too because they want to support a creator.
Yeah.
And it is kind of interesting that you find out, hey, how many people do I know who kind of have my back and would like to help me out with something and just show a little bit of support. And that part is pretty cool too. You can kind of reach out to your own personal networks wherever they may be and get some support that way. And I think I see some really great creators out there put things on Kickstarter, and I think, oh man, this one's going to knock it out of the park. And sometimes they don't, and you sometimes wonder why. And I sometimes think it's they don't spread the word. They think just the Kickstarter platform is going to do all of the
I've seen that too
out on its own, and it really doesn't. And I also have a feeling that there are a lot of people who maybe try to do it in secret. And for anybody who's creating a Kickstarter, I guess the major piece of advice I would say is you can't do it in secret. You got to tell everybody. You got to tell your grandma's friend. You got to tell your barber. You got to tell everybody, hey, I'm putting myself out there, and take a look and see if you're interested. And
yell it from the mountaintops.
High about it.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many projects that I've backed, not because I wanted the product. I mean, I did want the product, but primarily because I wanted to support the artists, the creators, the writers, and the people. I'm like, not going to have room for this. I want them to make it, and I want to make sure it happens.
Scott, I want to ask you about.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, John.
Over the course of this whole process, because now I'm sort of invested in the platform. It's funny. I think I've probably backed maybe 20, 25 comics over the course of the last year. I haven't even had a chance to read them all, but the idea of supporting other indie creators is real important to me now, because I know how much work goes into it.
That actually happened to me too. I do. When I post on my project on Kickstarter, I start obviously noticing more projects on Kickstarter. I'm like, oh, I want to back this one. I want to back this one. And I'm like, I probably have to raise money, but at the same time, I want everybody to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, I want to ask you about Red 5. Have you guys had luck with crowdfunding or other sources of getting backing for the projects?
Well, when we started in 2007, there was no such thing as crowdfunding. So it was all out of your own pocket. Yeah. So, it was very, very risky, digging a deep credit card hole, or putting your personal finances at risk, and plus at risk with your spouse. But recently there are creators that have done Kickstarters and then brought their completed title to us. So I am seeing it done, but you've got to be really organized and really responsible to pull off one of those things. I've seen a number of creators, fail to do the fulfillment. There was one creator that, had me do his fulfillment, and I can't tell you how many hours I spent packing boxes, putting stuff together for postage, etc. So it's a big time commitment and a lot of responsibility. If you're not organized, you probably shouldn't undertake it, but it can be a huge boost. I mean, it's a good source of money that you may not have otherwise have access to, and you can, avoid digging that deep credit card hole trying to pay your artist and letterer and colorist and printer and everybody else. So, yeah.
Scott, I feel called out. No, you probably don't know, but I have a Kickstarter that I did this year, and it was successful, and it's done, but I paid all the artists originally out of pocket first. So that was that part of it. And now, I got everything ready to go, but it's hard for me to get everything organized to get it out to the backers. So it's going to go to them, but it's not going to go as timely as I would have preferred. It's one of those things where I wish there was a publishing entity, I can write, I can connect with artists, but I can't be a manager. I can't be the publisher. You know what I mean? What is that like working with other creators, Scott?
It's good, but it's a lot of work. Like we've got 50 different titles that we've done since 2007, and
Wow.
every quarter I got to calculate the royalties to pay them, and you got to keep them paid. And well informed. That's very important. And so it's just the accounting alone is a big deal, and then trying to keep them well stocked, for stuff to sell locally, answering their questions, and it's not just the one creator you're dealing with the other 49 as well. So it's a lot of work, very time consuming, and it becomes more so the longer you stay in business.
At the same time, though, you guys have been fairly successful as far as indie comics go. I see you at all the big events. I know that people are always interested in when you have new books coming out. So it's paid off to an extent. Although, again, like I believe you that it's so much work.
Yeah, it's right now it's a one-man operation. I'm running the show by myself, and I've got one guy helping run all my social media. I've got another guy out in California that does conventions out there. And then being in Texas, it's very difficult just to get out of the state to do a convention, because by the time you pay for airfare, hotel, shipping, the booth at another convention, you're deep in the hole. And you have to sell a heck of a lot of books to get out of that hole. You almost have to write off a convention as an advertising effort, and there's got to be some other carrot to go there, like networking with new creators, or like in the case of San Diego, you've got production companies from Hollywood coming up to the booth. Yep. And you make new contacts, and we've actually had stuff optioned before from somebody that just walked up. Yeah, I mean, at the Comic-Con this past year, I had a guy walk up. He was from the company that did Deadpool and Wolverine, and they were looking for properties. So yeah, I'm willing to lose a little money to go to San Diego if I get contacts like that. So you gotta be smart with the money you have. It is gambling to a degree, and you only go into it betting what you're willing to lose, right? So
that makes sense.
Yeah. I frequently see a lot of publishers just overextend themselves, overspend on things that really aren't going to have a return. You can walk around a convention and look and say, okay, they're going to be gone next year. They're going to be gone next year. They'll be gone in 2 years. So because we've made all those very expensive mistakes, and if you're not set up to survive those mistakes, then you're going to be gone pretty quick.
Well, the idea of Comic-Cons as kind of a networking thing, this is something I've heard from a lot of creators in a good way, that they get to meet, number one, other creators, get advice, ask, what should I not do next time kind of thing. But also, like you said, make those connections outside the industry, people who are interested in, well, what can we do with this? Can you make it a movie? Can you make it a product? I want to ask you, Scott, real quick. You've been to Comic Indie Con before. When it's a convention like that, it's different from, like, say, San Diego, where there's actors and autographs and stuff. This is more for the art, for the comics. What was your experience with Comic Indie Con?
Really good. Good crowd, interesting venue, at the art studio, setting up in the hallway. And so you had a lot of people that had never been exposed to comics before seeing it for the first time, but they're very interested in supporting independent artists and creators. So it was a good venue. And plus it was very helpful for me to be able to drive, leave my house, go there, exhibit, and then come home at the end of the day without having to pay for their hotel, everything else. So
I was going to say, you say that, and when I did it, I had to drive back for 3 or 4 hours back to Austin afterwards.
Well, you can come stay at my house if you need to. We got a couch for you. So
it was fun, though. I really loved it. I love when there are these indie focused conventions, because look, I work a lot of conventions. I work a lot of big ones, I work a lot of small ones, and I love the big ones, the cosplay and all that stuff. But the small ones, it's about the creators, it's about the comics, it's about the art, it's about the writing, it's about, and that's what I love about those things.
Yeah. There was a really good indie convention in Austin that we used to do called Staple.
It's back.
And those people, yeah, they were all, those customers were always really big on trying something new, something weird, whatever. And they were willing to take a chance. And we did always quite well there with Mr. Uncle Staple. And, but I mean, you're right. I'm trying to, the market's changed, and trying to find the right convention to exhibit at is a real challenge. I mean, if you go to a convention and Mark Hamill's charging $700 for an autograph, they don't have any money left to go buy an oddball comic they've never heard of before. So, and I started trying to do other conventions. Like a couple weekends ago, I did a horror convention, and it was the third best convention I've had for the entire year. I mean,
in terms of sales,
people were buying. Yeah.
See, that's been my experience. Well. People go to see the actors. That's cool, but they're not always there to see comics they haven't heard of. Where if it's like horror, if it's indie, if it's art based, those are all ones where people are there to see something new. And that's that's where you're gonna get the customers. Jonathan, what are your hopes for Comic Indie Con?
For Comic Indie Con, I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be just a great platform for really just the type of audience that I'm after. I mean, I've kind of got like right here on my, I don't know if you can see it, it says support indie comics creators right there on the flag. I mean, I think for people who want to come out and see something new, talk to creators, maybe get in on the ground floor of, a new product, that to me, that's just going to be the perfect audience. And then the idea of just networking with other creators too is really cool. I've been surprised how many times I've gone to conventions and talked to other creators, and they're like, hey, you're doing something neat. I want to be part of it. Can I do an alternate cover for your book? Or, could I, get involved in some way? Could I do a poster or something? And I meet other creators, and I'm like, hey, I want to do a page in your book, the splash page or something, just to get involved in stuff like that. And that's what's really neat is it's easy to kind of feel isolated, but you go to a convention like that and you realize, hey, there's like-minded people out there. And that's really cool, both creators and fans.
I talk to people who are not in the indie comics industry, and they assume that we're all competing with each other. But my experience has been most indie creators that I talk to, I mean, not everybody, but most are there to support each other. They want, like, even if it's just advice support or just encouragement, sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's art, like you said, but most of it's just saying, hey, we want you to keep doing what you're doing. And my argument is always, the more that the product is out there, the more the public is used to the idea of buying these indie comics, the more they have a taste for it. You know what I mean? If there's only one that ever popped up, that wouldn't mean anything to them.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you can kind of grow the pot in a way. It's like not every industry is that way, but it's like microbreweries or something. New microbreweries can move into the same neighborhood, and you actually get more people who come. They don't have to split that same sort of.
It draws them together.
Yeah. So I think you can, get more people interested in indie comics, and it's not going to take anything away from the big league guys, but just more people realizing that it's out there, and maybe off their phones and pick up a comic. Well, they can read a digital comic.
Well, yeah, both. I will admit I do a lot of digital comics now in terms of as a purchaser, simply for the space. I a couple of years ago got rid of tens of thousands of comics just to clear up space, and
wow,
paid for my student loans. Scott, you mentioned earlier that you got a movie in the works. Can you tell me about the future of Red 5, the immediate future? What do we have coming up?
Yeah, we've got a number of titles. We've just well, let's see, where should we start? There's a lot going on. We've got, like I said, Afterburn. The movie's going to come out sometime next year. I got mine signed by the director. Sun's out, guns out.
Nice.
So we're gearing up for that, and I am doing. We've done a volume 1 and 2 of Afterburn, and I'm doing a volume 3 right now to be tied with the movie release, and I don't know when that is, so there's kind of a fuzzy deadline there.
Yeah, that's how that works. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, then we've got a book out right now, and I should have brought a copy over here. It's called The Last Harlemite, and it's our first time to dip our toe in the manga world. It's from an African American creator from Harlem, about a kid that's surviving in post-apocalyptic Harlem. It's pretty cool. It's in stores right now. And then,
I mean, honestly, the tagline alone sounds exciting. I want to check that out.
yeah.
Agreed. And Jonathan, how about you? What's coming up next for MechaMythic Comics? We're going to get future volumes of the Assyrian Code. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm working on this part. The creative part has been like a little bit slow because I'm trying to like lay out this larger story. So I've been kind of trying to craft 3 more books to tell this story, and I'm really getting down to doing the art on book number 2, and it's going to be sort of an elaboration off of the book number 1. It's going to have basically all the original pages, and then it's going to be intertwined with another story that kind of gives you more background on the world, this sort of apocalyptic activity that happens, and kind of sets us up for the next 2 books. So that's really what I'm working on now. And the exciting thing about it too is just kind of through this whole process, having met other artists and collaborating with other artists, that part has been really fun too. So the book will have at least 3 variant covers done by different artists. That part of is really fun. And then one of the things that really I found to be very time consuming and that frankly I wasn't great at in the first book was the coloring. And so I intend to have the colors done by another professional artist. So
I want to pause you for 1 second. I'm looking at your Kickstarter. Is that your colors on there?
Yeah.
That's good. Literally, that was one of the first things I noticed was that the coloring was good. And you're like, oh, it wasn't great. I get it. That's people always can't see their own stuff. I get that.
Yeah, you start your own stuff for a long time, and you see a lot of the flaws. I would say for first effort, it's definitely passable.
But that's pretty exciting. Jonathan, where can people find you online?
I can be found at OsirianCode.com, and I can also be found at Osirian Code on both Facebook and Instagram.
Excellent. And Scott, where can people find about Red 5 online? You even have somebody running your social media, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we're on red5comics.com. I have a web store there. If you order something, I pack it up myself and mail it to you. So if you want something signed, I can do that for free. We're also on all the social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, so you can interact with us there as well.
And once again, I've been Kevin Garcia. I can be found at kevingarcia.com and also KevinGarcia_com and a lot of the social medias, mostly on TikTok, though, weirdly enough, at least for now. So we'll see how that goes. It's been really great talking to you guys. I'm really excited to see you both in person at Comic Indie Con. I was there last year. I really loved it last year. It was a lot of fun. It reminded me of other indie comics conventions that I've worked at, but I don't get to work in Houston as much. So that's really cool. But thank you guys both for coming. This has been a great talk.